Welcome back, Webelos Scouts, for Activity 16, Administering First Aid and First Responders. Hemphill, Camino Real, Blanco Vista Elementary, and all others are welcome.
For fun activities at home, visit our YouTube channel, Sacred Springs Scout Reach. Please join me in the Scout Oath. On my honor, I will do my best to do my duty to God and my country and to obey the Scout law, to help other people at all times, to keep myself physically strong, mentally awake, and morally straight.
Please join me in the Scout law. A Scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent.
Show the Cub Scout sign. Tell what it means. Make the sign with your right hand. Hold your arm straight up. The two raised fingers stand for the Scout Oath and the Scout Law. The fingers look like the sharp ears of the wolf, ready to listen to a Kayla. Remember that a Kayla means good leader to a Cub Scout. Your mother or father or guardian is a Kayla. So is your Cub Master or your den leader. At school, your teacher is a Kayla.
Say the Cub Scout motto. Tell what it means. The Cub Scout motto is do your best. A motto is a guiding principle and a rule for living. Do your best means trying your hardest, not just a little bit. Do your best all the time. Do your best in school and at home. Do your best when you play a game and help your team. Do your best as you work on your rank adventures.
First responder. My mom is an emergency medical technician, and she says first responder is the most important Webelos Scout adventure. In fact, she told me the other day that her ambulance crew was able to save a man's life because his son, a Webelos Scout, saw that he was having a heart attack and called 911. How cool is it that he was able to help? Wouldn't it be awesome to have the skills and confidence to be prepared to save somebody's life? Well, you never know. It just might happen. That's what the First Responder Adventure is all about.
Requirement 8. Visit with a first responder. First responders are people who keep us safe. They include police officers, firefighters, EMS workers, and search and rescue professionals. Whenever an emergency happens or someone calls for help, they are the first people to respond. Many first responders were once Webelos Scouts, just like you. Some enjoyed learning about first aid and wanted to provide emergency medical care for a living. Others became police officers or firefighters because they wanted to help other people, just like the Scout Oath says. In fact, first responders are helpful all the time, even when they aren't working. If an emergency happens in the woods, on an airplane, or in a restaurant, they quickly take action. Meet with a first responder and learn more about his or her work. If possible, meet at a place like a fire station or police station so you can see the equipment and vehicles the first responder uses. Ask the first responder what training or education he or she has had. Find out how you can be helpful in your role as a Scout first responder. A Scout is courteous. When you visit a first responder, show good manners, follow instructions, and say thank you as you leave. Maybe someday I'll be an EMT like my mom, but I can help my community even if I don't become a first responder because I know what to do in an emergency. In fact, Mom said people usually look to Scouts in emergencies because we have a special training. I think I'm up to the task. What about you? Requirement 1. Explain what first aid is. Tell what you should do after an accident. When people get hurt, they need help right away. That help is called first aid. It's the quick help someone receives before professional help can arrive. You might be the only person at the scene of an accident who can provide first aid, so it's important to know the right way to help. The Scout motto is be prepared.
One way to be prepared is to learn how to do first aid before an emergency occurs. First aid is what happens when you remove a tick that's burrowed into your skin. First aid is what happens when, after you scrape your knee, your mom cleans and bandages the wound. First aid is what happens when a server in a restaurant saves a choking victim by giving abdominal thrusts. First aid is what happens when a Boy Scout performs CPR while he's waiting for an ambulance to arrive. First aid is what you will learn during this adventure. What to do after an accident. If you come across an accident or medical emergency, do these things. Check. Make sure the scene is safe before approaching. You can't help anyone if you become a victim yourself. Calm down and think. Assess the situation and decide what needs to be done. Staying calm may be hard to do, but it's important. The victim will feel better knowing you are in control, and you will be able to make better decisions than if you were panicked. Call. If the victim seems badly hurt, send someone to call for medical help. If no one is there to do that, call for help and offer to assist the victim. Care. Explain that you know first aid and get permission to treat the victim before doing anything else. When sending someone to get help, point at a specific person and say something like, Juan, go call 911 and ask for an ambulance. Don't assume everybody knows what to do. Do not move a badly hurt person unless he or she is in further danger. It may be necessary to move a person if there is a nearby fire or if the person is lying in the road. But never move an injured person unless it is absolutely necessary. Check the victim for hurry cases. Treat the victim for shock. A scout is brave, but that doesn't mean bravery is something you're born with. You can train yourself to face emergencies with courage. In an emergency, remember to be strong, be calm, be clear, be careful. How to get help in an emergency. In most parts of the United States, you can dial 911 to get help for all kinds of emergencies, including medical problems. Some communities may have different phone numbers for the police, fire department, emergency medical services, EMS, or rescue squad. So ask your parent or den leader for the right phone numbers for your community. When you call for help in an emergency, remember the 3 W's: who, what, and where. Who? Give your name and the phone number you're calling from. Some 911 systems can trace your phone number and location, but others can't. What? Explain the situation. Is it a fire? A car accident? How many people are hurt? What are their injuries? Where? Give your exact location using either the street address or the names of both streets at the nearest corner. Never hang up until the operator tells you to. He or she may need more information. Don't worry, the operator can still send help. Never call 911 except in actual emergencies. Calling in non-emergency situations is dangerous because it could prevent real emergency calls from getting through. To practice making 911 calls, use a toy phone or a cell phone that has been turned off. My mom invited a real 911 operator she knows to one of our den meetings. He had us make pretend calls to him, which really helped us understand what to do in an actual emergency. How to get help in other situations. At times, you may need to get help in non-emergency situations. Maybe you want to report a suspicious car nearby or a broken traffic light. Maybe you need help with a family problem.
Find out how to get help where you live and make a list of the phone numbers. Post the list on your refrigerator so everyone can find the numbers quickly. It's also a good idea to put your list on a card and carry it with you. Our home address. Important phone numbers. Keep a list of numbers for police or sheriff department, fire department, ambulance or emergency medical services, utility company, such as electricity, gas, water, your family doctor, poison control center, 800-222-1222, Your religious institution, church, synagogue, mosque, etc. Your parents' or guardian's cell phone. Your parents' or guardian's workplace. A friendly neighbor who can help you.
The below requirements are demonstrated afterwards. Requirement 2. Show what to do for the hurry cases of first aid. Serious bleeding, heart attack or sudden cardiac arrest, stopped breathing, stroke, poisoning. Requirement 3. Show how to help a choking victim. Requirement 5. Demonstrate that you know how to treat the following: cuts and scratches, burns and scalds, sunburn, blisters on the hand and foot.
Hey, my name's Jacob,
I'm Shauna.
and we're coming to you from Cincinnati, Ohio.
Today we're going to talk to you about first aid.
First aid is what happens right after an accident before professional help arrives.
Right after an accident, you want to check, call, care.
You want to check to see how the victim is and what their condition is,
You want to call for help or 911.
and you want to care for them to the best of your ability.
Now we're going to talk about hurry cases. Hurry cases are situations in which you need to get emergency help immediately. But here are some steps you can take to help your victim while we're waiting for emergency services.
One of these hurry cases would be when someone's heart stopped or something called cardiac arrest. Now, they might look like they're sleeping, so you want to shout their name and ask if they're okay, and even tap on their shoulders a little bit to see if they wake up. If they don't, then you want to definitely check for a pulse. You can check for a pulse using 2 fingers, and their pulse should be located around their neck. If you don't feel a pulse, then I recommend starting chest compressions until help arrives. So you want to interlock your fingers, one on top of the other, one hand on top of the other, and push down with the heel of your palm on the center of the chest. I do recommend that you get some formal CPR training so you can be prepared to help others if the time arises.
Now we're going to talk about serious bleeding. Serious bleeding is typically when it is squirting like a fountain as opposed to oozing.
So in order to stop serious bleeding, you want to make sure you first protect yourself by having your gloves on. And you want to go for anything like gauze, or if that's not available, you could even use a neckerchief or a t-shirt and apply it to the bleeding and apply pressure to stop it immediately. You could take something such as a triangle bandage, which looks a lot like a neckerchief opened up, and tie it off in order to get that bleeding, in order to secure that gauze and get that bleeding to stop.
Another hurry case is stopped breathing. Stopped breathing is when the individual has something blocking their airways or their lungs aren't working for whatever reason. You can check this by tilting the head back, listening. If you hear nothing or feel nothing on your cheek, make sure you check the inside of their mouth to see if there is anything in the way. If there is, make sure to remove it, and you can begin rescue breaths. We highly recommend having a barrier on you at all times to protect yourselves. Again, we recommend having professional CPR training to keep you prepared.
The next hurry case we're going to talk about is stroke. Stroke is very time sensitive, so you want to make sure you call 911 as soon as you recognize the symptoms. A good way to test for stroke is to use the FAST stroke test developed right here in Cincinnati. FAST stands for face, so you want to look for any facial drooping. A stands for arms, look for any arm weakness or numbness that the patient may have. S stands for speech, so you want to look for any slurred speech that the patient may have. And if you see any of those symptoms, then it's time to jump to T, which stands for time. It's time to call 911.
Another hurry case is poisoning. Poisoning occurs when you ingest or inhale anything that you should not, including chemicals. When this happens, it's time to call 911 immediately and your local poison control.
So now we're going to talk about some basic injuries that you should be prepared for. So the first one is cuts and scratches. For cuts and scratches, you just want to use some soap and water to make sure it's nice and clean. And if the person doesn't have any allergies, use a little bit of antibiotic ointment to help keep it from getting infected, and just use a Band-Aid to cover it.
Another minor injury that you will come across can go from minor to severe really quickly, and that is burns. Burns come in 3 degrees. First-degree burns are typically just red skin. This is most common with sunburn. When you see sunburn or any other first-degree burn, you want to remove them from the sun or heat source immediately, run it under cool water, and add aloe or burn cream to help with the pain. Second-degree burns are typically With blisters. When you see this, you want to leave the blisters alone, run the skin under cool water, and apply a loose gauze to protect the skin. Third-degree burns are our most severe. Third-degree burns are usually charred skin, meaning it looks black. They typically feel no pain. When this happens, call 911 immediately. Leave the burn alone. Do not remove any clothing or skin, and treat for shock.
The next scenario we're going to talk about is a nosebleed. A nosebleed is pretty common and can look really serious, but can easily be controlled, typically within a few minutes. If someone has a nosebleed, have them sit up and tilt their head forward and pinch their nose. Above that point where they pinch their nose, you're going to want to apply a cool cloth and have them pinch their nose for about 10 minutes. If the nosebleed lasts more than 15 minutes, go ahead and get some help.
Blisters are another very common injury you might find, especially if you're hiking or at camp. Blisters are caused by your shoes rubbing up against you if they don't fit properly. That's a great way to make sure you avoid them is by having good fitting shoes and socks and keeping your socks dry. If you do have a blister, do not pop the blister. Keep it wrapped in some moleskin cut in a donut shape. You put the donut hole over top of the blister and it pads the skin around it.
Next scenario we're going to talk about is choking. Choking can be really serious, but it's something that you can act on immediately and help to make a difference. Choking is when there's something blocking someone's airway and they can't breathe. If they're able to talk or cough, then their airway isn't completely blocked and they're not necessarily choking, so you should just encourage them to keep coughing and hopefully cough the object up. Otherwise, they might be displaying the universal choking sign, and you want to make sure you ask them if they can talk or if they need help. If they nod yes that they need help, then you want to go ahead and do something called the Heimlich Maneuver. For the Heimlich Maneuver, you want to get behind the person and you want to ball up one fist and put it about where their belly button is and place your other hand over that, and then you would push in and move up. And do that until the object comes up.
Thanks for joining us today for First Aid.
Make sure to grab a buddy and practice these skills, and even make a first aid kit and talk to a healthcare professional so you can be prepared to help other people in a time of need.
Protective measures to take when giving first aid. Treat all blood as if it contains germs that can make you sick. Do not use bare hands to stop bleeding. Always use a protective barrier. If you have any cuts or scrapes, cover them with a bandage. Always wash your hands and other exposed skin with hot water and soap immediately after treating the victim. When possible, don't use a kitchen sink. The following equipment should be included in all first aid kits and used when giving first aid to someone in need. Disposable, latex-free gloves to be used when stopping bleeding, dressing wounds, performing CPR, or treating a victim who is choking. Plastic goggles or other eye protection to prevent a victim's blood from getting into the rescuer's eyes in the event of a serious bleeding. Antiseptic for use in cleaning exposed skin areas, particularly if soap and water are not available.
Requirement 4, show how to treat for shock. When a person is injured or under great stress, the circulatory system might not provide enough blood to all parts of the body. That's called shock. The person will feel weak. The face may get pale. The skin will feel cold and clammy. He or she may shiver or vomit. Don't wait for these signals to appear. Give any badly injured person first aid for shock. Call 911 for emergency help immediately. Have the person lie down on his or her back. Raise the feet slightly, unless you think there are injuries to the head, neck, back, hips, or legs. If you don't know, have the person lie flat. If the person is not awake, turn him or her on the side. But first, be sure the person has no head, neck, or back injuries. If the weather is cool, cover the person with a sheet. If it's hot, don't. Do not give the person anything to eat or drink. Stay with the person until help arrives.
Call 911 only in an emergency. Fire Department. Join us next time for Activity 17, more first aid, bike, car, and skateboard safety. If you are interested in joining a pack near you, visit beascout.scouting.org.